bins on the.
There they all are.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. My name is Councillor David Beeman. I'm Chairman of this committee and I'm accompanied by the Vice Chair, Councillor Penny Rivers. Members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking, and please can I also ask that any questions are kept brief and to the point. I'd like to remind ward councillors to sit separately from the committee, which, while applications in the ward have been considered and voted on by the committee. Right, shall we start? Apologies for absence and substitutions, Leila.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Andrew Lawton and Councillor Jane Austen, and Councillors Peter Clark and Michael Goodridge are substituting.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Keane did give her apologies to Kimberly. I don't know why they haven't been put on there, but she did apologise. She has that shoulder injury.
It shall be recorded. Right, second item, minutes of the last meeting. Committee, can we approve the minutes of the meeting held on 10th of January 2024 and published on the Council's website as correct record of the meeting, please? Thank you. Questions from members of the public?
Sorry, there's been no questions from the public.
Members?
No questions from members.
Any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since the last meeting? Claire, do you want to?
Nothing to report, Chair.
Anybody got any declarations of interest? Oh, yeah, Councillor Morrison.
Surrey Wildlife.
Next item on the agenda is planning enforcement update report, but because of the nature of the agenda tonight, we intend to take that towards the end, at the end of the of this meeting. Right. So we move on to the main substance of the meeting, and the first one is WA 2023-01714 land southeast of Binscombe Godalming, the erection of 27 dwellings, affordable houses, and associated works, including a vehicular, cycle and pedestrian accesses, open space and landscaping. Now, before we hear this, I just want to make a short statement. This is for the benefit of the members of the public as well as members. And I'd like to take the opportunity to remind all members of the Planning Committee that they're responsible for making an informed and fair decision, balancing social, economic and environmental needs to achieve sustainable development. Any decisions reached should be defendable, should a refusal be subject to appeal. I'm aware there have been some comments on social media on this particular application, and which could be interpreted as an attempt to try and influence the views and opinions of Planning Committee members. Whilst members of the Planning Committee may have personal sympathy with some of or all of these views, it is not the role of the Planning Committee members to make decisions solely based on views expressed on social media. The decision of this Planning Committee should be based on the report of the designated planning officer, which will be open to questions by members of the Planning Committee, followed by constructive debate. Planning Committee members will also have the opportunity to hear from a supporter, an objector, ward councillors and the parish council, which for the Binscombe application is Godalming Town Council. Right. Now, I would respectfully ask the members of the public to give respect to when this report is being presented, and the report is being presented by Russell Brown. Russell.
Okay. Good evening. So this is a planning application for 27 affordable dwellings, as the chair has set out. The site is on the northern section of Binscombe, close to New Pond Road, and to the northeast with Farnham Street to the south. The site is a previous agricultural field, bounded by matured trees to the northeast and north and southeast, rear gardens, residential properties with established hedgerows, mingled with trees to the northwest. You can kind of see the site there with the red point. That is the site location plan. So it is situated in the northernmost part of settlement boundary of Godalming, not far south of the boundary of the borough. The site is not within the conservation area, but is in the vicinity of the Binscombe Conservation Area to the southwest. It is also with a setting of 3 Grade 2 listed buildings, St Christopher Cottage, which you can see to the north there, and Binscombe Farmhouse and Fox's Barn as well, which are to the southwest. The site, as a lot of you will be aware, was taken out of the Greenbelt boundary, so it is also outside of an area of outstanding natural beauty, which are now known as national landscapes, and is also outside an area of great landscape value. It is also within flood zone 1. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the photos illustrating the northern boundary of the site, where the gate is. That is going to be the access to the site for vehicular traffic. Next slide, please. And this is a southern boundary. These photos were taken from the road Cop side to the south, and also to from the public right of way that runs along that boundary. Next slide, please. And then that's just a wider photo from the south from Cop slide. Next, please. So these are some street scene views. Obviously, you've got some photos there, and also computer generated images during the winter. So it's going to be pretty accurate of what it is at the moment with the development in place. Next slide, please. And you've got some summer views where you can see that vegetation would obviously kind of be a lot more dense along those boundaries. So this is just the policy context, what I was talking about earlier, removal from local, during the local plan process, part 1 in 2018, removal from the Greenbelt boundary, and it now forms part of the settlement area of Godalming. Next slide, please. Just a bit more about the constraints, really, just showing the location of a conservation area to the southwest. See a few other designations there in terms of the Thames Valley Basin Heath Special Protection Area as well, but there's no contribution needed to that. And then this is the actual site plan showing the mix of dwelling types. You've got a mix in terms of the affordable housing provision. You've got 10 affordable rent dwellings and 17 shared ownership dwellings. A mix of a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom. The dwellings are also a mix of detached, semi-detached, and masonette styled buildings, all 2 stories, and with pitch roofs, gable ends, porches, built of red brick, some with brown tower herring on the first floor and canted bays. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, that's just showing the tenure plan. So the blue being the shared ownership dwellings, and kind of reddy brown being the affordable rent. Next slide, please. This is just a contextual analysis plan, just showing kind of the various housing types. You've kind of got a lot of the 1780s dwellings kind of to Cop side and beyond, the more historic buildings within the Binscombe Conservation Area to southwest. They're marked in red. Next slide, please. This is a materials plan, so this is what I was talking about earlier, about materials which have been developed and revised during the application process to be more in keeping, in particular, with the conservation area. Next slide, please. So part of this application is it secures highways improvement works. These, you can see the site there in the north. A lot of the pedestrian improvement works are to the south, in and around the Binscombe Medical Centre, just to make it more accessible for pedestrians. Of course, they've got removal of bollards to an existing footpath there to the southwest of the site. Next slide, please. The relevant planning consideration is the planning history on this particular site where an application was previously refused on heritage grounds and also for not providing Section 106 contributions for infrastructure. Like I say, that was refused and also dismissed that appeal. So you can see the comparison on the slides there between what was refused and what is now proposed. The buildings on site have been pulled in from the western boundary, which is obviously the closest to the conservation area. And you've got a lot more open space on site. The key difference is the amount of built footprint is about 200 metres squared less than the previous application. Next slide, please. This is the landscaping plan. So what you have there, you probably can't quite read the boxes, but you've starting in the northeast corner, you've got a suds attenuation basin. There were some of the drainage issues that are on site. And then coming round to the east, you've got existing heavily landscaped wooded buffer. That is to be a subject to woodland management plan, which is also going to be partly funded through the Section 106 process. There are going to be two links into that in the northeast corner and the southwestern corner, proposed by the application as well. And then you've got some additional planting around all the boundaries. And then you can kind of see it earlier from the photos, the main access is just to the western elevation there. Next slide, please. So talking about affordable housing, really, the policy position on affordable housing is 30%. This application proposes for all the dwellings to be 70%, 100%, with the 70% being secured through the Section 106. I'm not going to repeat everything else on the slide, but and then I think I've talked quite a lot about the heritage issues on this. Just suffice to say that there has been previous discussions and negotiations about the impact on heritage assets. So the Heritage Office has put some comments on the website now, and there are revised comments where she identifies less than substantial harm. That is, within that there is almost a sliding scale of harm within that. So it's at the lower end of that. I will point out that when you are considering the impact of a proposed development on the significance of a designated heritage asset, in which case these are the conservation area and the setting of listed buildings, great weight should be given to the asset's conservation. This is irrespective of whether any potential harm amounts to substantial harm, total loss, or less than substantial harm to significance, which is the case here. Less than substantial harm can be outweighed by public benefits. In this case, they are the affordable housing, the public open space on site, the local area of play, the suds attenuation basin, the points of access from the existing public right of way, the saving in carbon emissions from which is basically the difference between the building regs and what is the proposal here. And then, yeah, moving on to highways, really, I think the most important thing to note is that the Surrey County Council highways have no objection to the proposal, subject to Section 106 contributions in terms of the highways works that I previously mentioned and were on the slides, and also conditions. I note that some of them haven't been carried through into my report, but I think number 4 was talking about speed limit and the gateway feature. They fall outside the planning process, and also a condition on electric charging points is now covered off by building regulations part 13, and also two of the conditions have been combined in my report into condition 15. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, and this is just setting out the consultation process, really. But got no kind of adverse comments from any of the consultees. Godalming Town Council support, subject to those matters on there, and Compton Parish Council object. Next slide, please. I think I've probably set out all the key issues here, just to kind of highlight those again. I just want to draw members and public attention to a section of my report about the contributions. So I think it's on the, hasn't got a paragraph number, but I think it's on one of the last paragraphs in my report. It just talks about the infrastructure provisions, the bus shelters would be covered by seal, as would the indoor fitness equipment. It wouldn't be relevant to cover those in a Section 106 agreement. Same with the play area contribution. Play area will be secured through a Section 106, but it's to do with the provision and maintenance of that. Also secured in the Section 106 would be the affordable housing, the maintenance of the SUDs, the sustainable urban drainage system for the lifetime of development, the highways works I mentioned before, and then a contribution of about 25,000 to the tree works in relation to the woodland management plan on the south eastern boundary. And yeah, so the recommendation today for this application is for approval. Invite any questions that members have.
Can we read questions at the end? I believe. Can we just clarify the affordable housing?
Sorry, members, I just wanted to bring members' attention to the affordable housing before we go into the speakers. So whilst the offer is for 100% affordable housing, only 30% of that is required by policy. The remaining in part would be shared ownership secured by a Homes England grant, which means that we cannot actually nominate tenants to go into or purchasers to go into those shared ownership. So in terms of the weight to give to that, that's set out in the report. So whilst you give that weight as an affordable housing offer, it's not full weight because it's not in line with the policy. So just to be 100% clear on that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll take questions after the speakers. Well, we have 5 public speakers on this item. The first being is Stephen Clark. Stephen, you have 4 minutes to speak. Well, 4 minutes and when you start speaking.
Good evening. My family have lived in Binscombe for over 30 years, and I'm here to speak on behalf of over 500 objectors who are passionate in opposition. For the record, there are only 2 supporters, one a resident of Leatherhead. The site is highly sensitive, being only 30 metres from Binscombe Conservation Area, about the width of this room. The proposed large-scale scheme would have a harmful adverse effect on designated heritage assets and would result in a fundamental change to the character of the area, contrary to local plan policies. The application is an outrageous attempt to rework a failed scheme of 2018 that was refused by the Planning Committee. Councillor Follows strongly objected, stating affordable homes were not realistic and the proximity of new buildings would damage the adjacent conservation area. He also stressed access was highly dangerous and these were material planning considerations. Nothing has since changed. A subsequent appeal was dismissed by Government Inspector in the clearest critical terms, and this new scheme does not counter his compelling planning law arguments. And I quote, "This would be harmful to an important part of the conservation area, given the importance of the approach, and would cause significant harm to heritage assets." Importantly, he did not concern himself with the type of housing proposed, affordable or otherwise. Arguably, this proposal is even worse than the previous rejected scheme in terms of concentration, alignment and visibility. It is simply a group of poorly designed buildings, the most prominent of which is only 20 metres from the lane, will damage the historic environment as in nothing to respect the unique character of Binscombe, a medieval hamlet first recorded in 1227. Godalming Trust, CPRE and Compton Parish Council have all objected, and a past Waverley Conservation Officer has stated that development of this field would have a harmful impact and diminish the significance of listed buildings nearby. The present Conservation Officer states that the scheme will have a similar urbanising effect to that identified by the Inspector and that proposed street scenes supplied are misleading. The applicant seeks to undermine the legal basis of the original refusal and appeal dismissal, as the buildings in the new scheme will still be clearly visible from the approach. This is a grave error given the Inspector's repeated reference to significance and setting. Sadly, there are many factual errors within the officer's report. The site is said to be southeast of Binscombe. It is in fact northeast. It is said to be on Binscombe Lane, which is incorrect, and surrounded by residential units, also incorrect. The site is said to have footpath access to Copside. There is no such access. It is stated that buildings would be significantly set back, also incorrect. A balanced report without mistakes and misleading information is the least members and residents can expect. In addition, there are no comments from Historic England within the documents, and they have confirmed by email that they have not been consulted. They are a statutory body who should be consulted when a proposal will cause harm to heritage assets. Even the applicant's own heritage statement admits there will be harm, and the failure to consult them illustrates a shameful disregard of the issues that form the Inspector's dismissal. Their views are essential, and without them, the application is invalid. Each scheme is unique, but there are close parallels to the Ash Manor site near Farnham. This was decided in the High Court, where it was successfully argued that harm to heritage outweighed the benefits and that committee members had not been accurately briefed. This and other judgments have clarified the NPPF and the approach planning authorities must take when heritage issues are at stake. There is now a strong statutory basis against granting planning permission if the setting of listed buildings is harmed, and that considerable importance and weight must be given to preserving heritage assets regardless of housing need. In conclusion, I urge councillors to consider the strength of local opposition to this completely inappropriate scheme that fails to overcome core planning principles. Ironic as it may seem, even the landowner tells me he would object. The council's own website promotes the preservation of heritage, and I would remind members that they have an obligation in law to protect the historic environment for future generations. It would be a tragedy if this application were approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Right, we have another next voice here, Jonathan Walton, who wishes to speak in support of the scheme. Jonathan.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Committee, we hope that the decision made tonight will be positive, which we believe will reflect the significant engagement and work undertaken during the pre-application and post-submission processes. As a company, we've been keen to do things in the right way. When we approached the council, there was no pre-application service in place. Rather than simply submit our application, we waited for 10 months until the service restarted. This was in June 2022. We've used the time since to engage, discuss and evolve our proposals and ensure the delivery of very significant on and off-site business benefits. As part of the process, we've met with planning, parks and landscape, borough and county highways and housing officers, the town council, ward members and importantly members of the public. We want to bring forward a truly exemplar scheme, and our proposals have been the subject of 4 design iterations as we've sought to respond positively and proactively to comments made. The development is one that can benefit your children and grandchildren. This is what our company is all about. At a time of housing crisis where many people can't afford to rent, never mind begin to consider buying a house, it's imperative that we all do what we can. We should be providing housing to those who want to live in the areas that they come from, particularly when the land in the question is within the settlement boundary, is sequentially preferable and is not subject to landscape or environmental designation. Planning guidance is quite clear that the principle of sustainable development is supported in such cases. As noted, our proposals are not just about housing and will deliver 100% affordable housing with affordable rented homes offered at either 65 or 75% of open market value. The housing mix has been proposed further to guidance from officers. A landscape-led approach that will provide 44% of the site as public open space, including a natural local play area. A scheme that provides over 50% biodiversity net gain, substantial improvement to existing drainage through the use of natural sustainable urban drainage systems, retention of all hedging along the northern border, significant on-site planting, largely obscuring views into the site and providing a considered and sensitive urban to rural transition. A design that preserves key views and minimises impact on surrounding heritage assets in the conservation area by locating built form further south within the site and away from the western and eastern boundaries. A draft woodland and landscape management plan, along with an agreed contribution towards implementation to enable improvements along the length of the public right-of-way from Binscombe to Copside, connections into and around the site from the public right-of-way, and an agreed contribution to improve access from the site through to the medical centre, providing access to local amenities and negating the requirement to use the Binscombe access for walking. A highly sustainable and efficient scheme that uses air source heat pumps and solar panels to deliver 66% CO2 saving and will substantially reduce energy costs to residents. In addition to the above, we've contacted the Highways Authority and have offered to progress with a traffic regulation order to reduce the speed limit in the vicinity of the site to 20 miles an hour. We will continue to discuss matters with officers and members to try to turn this into reality. Crucially, we've secured a registered provider to ensure the deliverability of our proposals. We've set out how we intend to manage and deliver the affordable housing in detail, which will form part of a Section 106 agreement should the proposals be supported. As part of our desire to ensure delivery of affordable houses back to the local community, we've agreed with Metropolitan Thames Valley that we will work with the housing team to publicise the scheme locally and to raise awareness within Godalming Parish Council and Waverley Borough Council of when the homes will be available. We remain committed to positive and proactive engagement and therefore seek further meetings with council officers and members to enable full and effective control over this matter. Finally, we've worked with officers to agree planning conditions to provide further reassurance regarding materiality, boundary treatments and landscape construction and environmental management. To conclude, our company is committed to helping those with housing need. We've brought forward an exemplar scheme that we believe can form a beneficial precedent within Waverley for others to follow. This is a good application and we hope it's one that the council can support. Thank you. If it would help, I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Right, the third public speaker is Councillor Joan Hegan. Hello, Joan. A long time no see. From Godalming Town Council. Joan, you have 4 minutes when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to explain Godalming Town Council's position regarding this application. As the officer has summarised, on balance, when we considered this last August, we did decide that the additional housing is a significant benefit to the local community and therefore could support the application, which is quite unusual for us. However, we're also caveated the support on the basis of the need for safe vehicle entry and exit to the site, including a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, and we also expressed concern about the potential flooding risk. The caveats are important and I'll come back to them, but I do want to elaborate on the reasons why, on balance, we feel this is an application to support, despite the volume of local objections, and many of them are understandable, but planning is about balance. The site has a history that is relevant here. It used to be in the green belt, but it was taken out in 2018. And the reason for that was to provide housing. and there are significant differences between this application for housing and the one that was refused in 2019. 2019 would only have given 6 affordable houses. This one delivers 27. That's a more than 4-fold increase in the number of affordable homes, and that is the nub of the additional benefit, because it's housing that we desperately need. There are over 100 Farncombe residents on the Waverley Housing Register. Those 27 new homes can make a huge contribution to meeting that need. The developer has also pointed out many of the other benefits, and we are aware of the efforts that have been made to make these houses as good as they can be in all of the circumstances. So turning to our caveats, we were encouraged when we saw the Surrey Highways response recommending a condition requiring a big gateway feature to reduce speed, albeit only to 30 miles per hour, whereas we wanted 20. The officer alluded to that condition not being relevant. I hope members will want to query that, because speed is a big risk along that road, and I think the committee should be giving maximum weight to what can be done in that regard. Our other second caveat related to surface drainage, which seems to have been suitably addressed. So, in summary, we feel the housing on this field became inevitable the minute it came out of Greenbelt, and having studied all of the details as schemes go, we think it's a good scheme, and despite the strength of the local opposition, the balance is for members to decide, and I hope that you can give due weight to our concern for more housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan. Right, we have 2 ward members who wish to speak. And ward members, you have 4 minutes before and 4 minutes after the debate, if you so wish, starting with Councillor Steve Williams.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I mean, members of this committee that are not familiar with this site will note that it's fairly near the fringe of the borough and the boundary, near the boundary with Guildford Borough Council. And I would certainly suggest at this stage, at the outset, that if you're not familiar with the site, you might need to familiarise yourself with it through a site visit. And I was quite surprised that there was not a site visit that was organised. As you will have already gathered, it is a controversial site, and there are many letters of objection, as you will have realised prior to this meeting, and a considerable strength of feeling against the development, as you will have noted at this meeting. Really, I need to make it clear at this point that this is a site that was in the Green Belt. It should be in the Green Belt. I campaigned against it being taken out of the Green Belt. Apparently, the Conservative group on Waverley Borough Council campaigned for it to be taken out or to be kept within the Green Belt before the Conservatives on Waverley Borough Council took it out of the Green Belt. So, in that sense, we are where we are. It was taken out of the Green Belt, and it remains, therefore, in planning terms, an area for development. And in that sense, the development that is before members tonight is a development which is a considerable improvement on the previous development which was rejected. I mean, it is the only 100% affordable housing development of this scale that I can remember being presented to this committee, and indeed sustainable homes too. And those on the housing waiting list may well welcome this, perhaps as fervently as the neighbours who have lodged objections. But as a local member, I've had many conversations with local residents about the application in terms of their concerns and objections. I think the main ones are around drainage, biodiversity and habitats, traffic and heritage. I think the concerns around biodiversity and habitats and drainage particularly have largely been dealt with by the planning officer's report and could be dealt with by conditions alongside the inevitable disruption during the construction phase. The two key grounds for concern that remain, I think, are around traffic and heritage. In the light of the Surrey Highways report, there is, I believe, little further that this committee can do to alleviate the impact on traffic. Although separately, I would certainly want to lobby Surrey County Council for a significant extension of the 20-mile-per-hour zone currently confined only to the stretch of road outside Loseley Fields School. However, the development would have an impact on heritage assets, and exercising your duties as members of this committee to take account of planning considerations only, you will need to carefully consider and weigh the heritage impact against any of the planning benefits. I said it's clear that this application is an improvement on the previous application. It's a smaller footprint and it's much more in alignment with what is considered desirable. And therefore, I leave members with the decision on this. And I again urge a site visit if members have any lack of clarity about the balance in this debate.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I just say that's an extra 23 seconds?
Yeah, I know.
Can we have that deducted from the next 4 minutes, please?
Well, I mean, yeah, he was going to an end. I thought he was going to finish a little earlier than that. But what am I doing? Councillor Rivers is the next speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to cut it short because it is a straightforward issue tonight. Members, I do not need to remind you how desperately short we are of affordable housing. You know that Waverley's local plan states the provision and delivery of affordable housing is an issue of particular importance locally. We know that the waiting list on the Waverley Housing Register totals 1,079 families, of which 160 families live in Godalming, and as far as my latest information, 81 families live in the Farncombe and Binscombe area. That's no small number. The applicant's housing needs summary report expands on this need. In this area, 35% of those seeking affordable home ownership are currently living with friends or family. We called it sofa surfing. Another 28% are renting privately at the huge local private rents. 17% are renting from the council or housing association, and the average age of those seeking affordable home ownership is 37. Members, in the application before you, there is a field that has been removed from the Green Belt designation and is allocated for housing in the local plan. In the inspector's report in February 2018, this site is identified as a small, well-enclosed piece of land between Binscombe and the built-up area of Farncombe and is closely related to existing development. This area rounds off the settlement and does not have an impact on the openness of the wider green belt. It helps accommodate Godalming's housing needs, and the site is well chosen and is a sound approach to ensuring consistency and to enable the site to contribute towards the housing requirement. That's what the inspector said in 2018. And on this field, which is currently private and not open for use by locals, this applicant proposes to build 27 houses, and I believe a Section 106 legal agreement will be in support. So, 27 additional homes sustainably built, near to schools, near to surgery, near to shops. This application delivers a major public benefit easily weighed against what the Heritage Report identifies as a less than substantial harm to the local heritage assets. Members, I support and recommend this application to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. That was 1 minute less than the 4 minutes, was it? Before we go forward, I think the head of planning wishes to make some comments on what was already said.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to clarify one point made by the first speaker, who was suggesting that the application before you this evening was invalid because we hadn't consulted Historic England. Just to confirm that it is a valid application and therefore you can make a decision on this application this evening. The council are required to consult Historic England in cases which relate to listed building consent or planning applications for permission to grade 1 or grade 2 star buildings or affecting the setting of a grade 1 or grade 2 star registered parks or gardens, scheduled monument or registered battlefield. The heritage assets that are referred to in the report, the dwellings close to the site, are actually grade 2. So it is a valid application. So it is within your gift to determine the application this evening.
Thank you very much. Right. Members, first of all, any questions to the Office Planning Officer regarding this application first? Peter Clark.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Clearly, town and parish councils have an important role to play as a consultee, especially if they have a neighbourhood plan. Now, I've looked at both Godalming Town Council responses for the previous application and for the current one that we are deciding this evening. But neither response mentions their neighbourhood plan, nor whether the site is allocated within the neighbourhood plan. For the benefit of members of the committee, can Russell, or indeed anybody else, confirm whether this site is indeed in the neighbourhood plan of Godalming? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So the Godalming and Farnham neighbourhood plan came in April 2019. That was after the previous application had been refused, but before it had been appealed. And I confirm there's no site allocation within that for this particular site.
Sorry, can I just come back? Can you confirm that it is in the neighbourhood plan?
Well, the application site is covered by the neighbourhood plan, but it's not allocated within that neighbourhood plan. It's not a site allocation in the neighbourhood plan.
Councillor Coburn.
So I just really wanted to clarify, does the Godalming neighbourhood plan allocate sites?
Oh, we can go to the
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Jeffrey Town Clerk for Godalming. The Godalming and Farncombe neighbourhood plan hasn't allocated any sites within its neighbourhood plan. This site had already been allocated before the Godalming and Farncombe neighbourhood plan was made.
We shall move into the debate then. Who wants to start the debate? Anybody? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. We're here this evening to talk about harm versus benefits. And in the case officer's report, it stated that the proposal would cause less than substantial harm and is indeed lower than the previously identified in the appeal decision. However, Waverley's principal heritage officer indicates in her report that this lower than previously indicated only applies to one of the buildings in the conservation area. As a heritage champion of Waverley for 4 years, I think it's important that the member's attention is drawn to a court ruling regarding the gradation of harm. This High Court, which was James Hall versus the City of Bradford, the judge clarified a number of important points concerning heritage policies, and particular regarding the levels of harm and the levels of harm to the setting of the heritage asset. The court held that there are only 3 gradations of harm in heritage terms. These 3 categories of harm, recognised as well in the NPPF, are clear. They are 3: substantial harm, less than substantial harm, and no harm. There are no other grades of categories of harm, but it is inevitable that the category of less than substantial harm could cover a broad range of harm. This judgment clarifies that even a low level of harm is sufficient to engage the heritage paragraphs within the NPPF. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to the Godalming Town Council for clarifying their view on this, because having read the report and done my research on the background papers and the evidence, I was a little bit confused as to why, with all the opposition, they were keen. And I must say I'm grateful for the clarification. In terms of the harm that Councillor Clark has just raised, I think we all feel that we have to protect both our heritage built and also our wildlife and biodiversity. But planning is a balance, and the difference between this application now and the one previously is that previously we had a 5-year housing land supply and all our policies carried full weight, whereas now we don't. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we are still way down on our 5-year housing land supply. And so all our policies, and I'm afraid that includes neighbourhood plans, much to my chagrin, you know, doesn't carry that weight at all. So we are in a strange balance here, a tilted balance, where we have to look at the, really look at the advantages and the disadvantages and weigh them. Councillor Higgins said it more eloquently than I. We have to weigh the balance. Planning is a balance. So that's our decision tonight. We've heard from 2 local councillors and from the applicant that this is a site that will provide, and from head of planning indeed, 100% affordable housing of some kind. I don't know how many times I've heard people in this chamber say, you know, we haven't got any affordable housing on this site, or it's too little. We actually have here the chance to do this. And unless I hear something persuasive to the contrary, I'm tempted to think that the balance is in favour of the affordable homes on this site. Thank you.
Councillor Rubini, then Councillor Weldon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's obviously difficult decisions. Like others, I've looked at this. I see that most of our statutory consultees actually support the application and don't go against it. I also see, and I take a lot of advice from Godalming Town Council, where they in fact weigh the affordable housing far more than anything else. I come from Haslemere. We have exactly the same problem down there as you do here. And we lose appeals because housing at the moment seems to want to take over all the land area, and we've got so little of it, we have to use it where we can. When I look at the map, and I do know the area, it does seem that this is an infill to the outskirts of that area, and it doesn't actually impinge on anything on the other side of the road. I do note that it has a screening all the way around it with trees and other areas, so it shouldn't be seen on the skyline or from other parts. So although it's going to be a difficult decision, because Godalming Town Council and others have agreed with it, it seems that I should probably think the same. Thank you.
So Weldon.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I acknowledge the strength of opposition from local people. I acknowledge that there are difficulties with this application. However, I agree strongly with the representation from Godalming Town Council and from Councillor Rivers and indeed Councillor Coburn. Planning is all about balance. The fundamental fact is that we are desperately short of housing, and there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development. This application not only provides much needed housing, it is providing exactly the right kind of housing. It is affordable housing, it is small units. There are substantial features of the application that in terms of climate change and provision for climate change, biodiversity net gain, there are a number of features in this application that I think are worth taking very seriously, and I believe they outweigh the difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I too want to acknowledge the residents who feel so strongly about this application, but I also feel extremely strongly for all of those who are on housing waiting lists and who are in desperate need of decent housing in our parish. And I do feel that the public benefit does outweigh the heritage issues in this case. It is all about balance, and like it or not, this application is not in the green belt nor in the conservation area. It's affordable housing. It's going to be with solar and air source heat pumps, which we should all be very, very happy with. There are concerns, and I support the concerns about the highways issues and the traffic, and I support Godalming Town Council's recommendations around the 20-mile-an-hour limit. And it's obviously essential that we have safe vehicle entry and egress, and by the way, of course, for pedestrians too. But having listened to all the arguments, I do believe that the public benefit and the need for housing outweighs the heritage matters.
Thank you very much. Any other councillor wish to speak?
I just ask for advice on the technical point of highways. I mean, I have to say I'm minded. I've got a lot of situations in my ward at the moment and being repeated around the borough where Surrey Highways seem to be approving schemes, and it's very difficult to believe how they're going to be safe. And I would just ask the question as regards Godalming's caveats, Godalming Town Council's caveats, which I'm in agreement with. Will they make any difference to what is decided tonight? I mean, are we talking about the opportunity to put a condition on if we approve and put a condition on that relates to Godalming Town Council's caveats?
Members, I think the difficulty you have is to reduce the speed limit requires a traffic regulation order, which is a process in itself. So as members, you can't put a condition on saying, and you must reduce the speed limit, because the condition itself can't achieve that. It's through a traffic regulation order, which is, again, sort of a process. Public can object to a TRO. So it doesn't therefore meet the tests for a condition because of that separate process that would need to be gone through.
Another councillor wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I know the area well because I've lived in the locality all my life, in Godalming, that is, and surroundings. I've been looking at the comparison between the 2018 proposal and the 2023 proposal on this bit of paper that was at the back, and I assume all the facts on this are correct. They've been put out for us to see, and I presume the officers have seen it and are happy with it. But certainly looking at the different layouts between 2018 and 2023, bearing in mind where the heritage buildings are, it would seem that this is an improved layout in that it is further away from the heritage buildings. And it is a matter of weighing up the disadvantages relating to the heritage. I'm still slightly sceptical about flooding on the basis that
we're told by one of the objectors, I think, that this was in the part of Compton Marsh, which I hadn't heard of before. And of course, whatever good drainage scheme you've got, if the whole area is liable to flood, you've got a problem. But one's got to weigh that against the benefit of having affordable housing, which this borough desperately needs. It is also, I mean, from the highway point of view, I don't think there's any way that one could object to this for highways, bearing in mind what Surrey County Council have said in their comments. I think on balance, I fall in favour of granting it for the affordable housing, particularly as the heritage buildings have been more sympathetically dealt with by moving the housing further away from them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We the planning manager officer wishes to.
Yeah, just to confirm that the leaflets that you have been produced by the applicant, not the planning team.
Councillor,
Is it accurate on the figures or not? Has it been looked at by officers?
So I haven't personally seen this document. So can I just confirm, I'm factually answering a question that I've been asked by the planning committee. Out of request through the chair, I don't have noise from the public gallery on this because I feel that's slightly unfair. So I haven't seen the document. What I'm going to do now is refer to the case officer to confirm whether he's seen it and whether it is 100% accurate, members. So the case officer has just confirmed that he's been through it, but he says it's a bit out of date. But members, we've given you a full presentation this evening. So it's a presentation of myself and my officers because the recommendation comes from me and not from the applicants. So members, if you rely on the presentation you've been given this evening, which is 100% accurate, and you can give whatever weight you choose to the publication that has been submitted, but you know, the advice and the guidance we're giving you is the presentation, the detailed presentation that Russell's given you this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, Councillor Goodrich, I looked at this map as well, but it is quite clear because it does have Opus Works in the bottom right-hand corner, so it is quite clear that it's from the developer. I'd just like to talk a little bit about your other comments about Compton Marsh and flooding. We also live local to that field. I'm not sure, you know, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think I've ever seen it flood. And the area that the field needs is in need of drainage is where the SUDS is, and that will mitigate that.
Could I ask members of the public gallery just to remain quiet and treat every intervention with respect, please? Any other? Then we go back to the ward councillors for the second 4 minutes, up to 4 minutes. Councillor Williams.
Yes, I'll be very brief because councillors have been debating what I felt that this would ultimately come down to. The harm to heritage assets against the benefits of the 100% affordable, sustainable housing. And the tenor of the debate has certainly suggested to me that the balance tips in favour of the housing element. But I would say that even though it may be hard to argue in this instance that the heritage impact weighs more heavily than the planning benefit, it is important that members understand the exact nature of the balance in this case. If there is any doubt, in my view, members of this committee should potentially defer this decision to go to see the site, to make the judgment, but then that is very much down to members' own understanding of the particular site and first-hand knowledge of the site.
Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Chair. I am perfectly happy to submit to the wisdom of the committee.
Well, thank you very much. A very difficult decision indeed to make, actually. I don't believe there's been anything to be gained by deferment of this particular decision, and therefore I would like to move straight to the recommendation. The recommendation is that delegated authority be granted to the Executive Head of Planning Development to grant Planning Commission subject to suggested conditions amended or additional conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement securing affordable housing and future management of the open space. Now, I think we're going to vote by electronic voting, so there again, if you want to vote in favour of that recommendation, you vote green, and if you vote against, red, and if you want to abstain, blue. Please vote.
Sorry, Chair. As you can see, the vote is 12 votes in favour and 1 abstention and 0 against. Therefore, the recommendation is carried.
Thank you very much. Right. A short break to enable people who want to leave the public area. Okay, well. If everybody's ready, we can proceed. The next application is WA 2023-00103, land known as 17 Fensham Road, Lower Bourne, Farnham, GU98HF, direction of a dwelling with associated works following demolition of original dwelling. Right, I believe that we have Russell Brown to present, please.
Okay, this is an application at 17 Frensham Road for erection of a dwelling with associated works. It's really important to note that this application has previously been determined at planning committee, and it's coming back just to remove one of the decisions on it for the Section 106 agreement to be sorry, it's a unilateral undertaking to be determined within 6 months of the date of the decision. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick overview of where the site is, it's south of Farnham. Next slide, please. Just to show the existing site plan. But as I say, this application's already been granted at planning committee. Next slide, please. Just effectively a replacement dwelling. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is still for approval. It's just to remove one of the decisions so as to not put a deadline on the completion of a Section 106. The current situation is that it's currently the unilateral undertaking, that should say, that is currently with legal negotiations are ongoing.
Thank you, members. Just to confirm, what I'm seeking this evening is delegated authority to complete the legal agreement, which hasn't been completed to date.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor Coburn, on this?
I certainly do. Please can I go back to those positions, because I didn't think that's what we gave permission for last time. I thought we gave permission for them to build the original permission of 2017, and that is 6 metres away from the existing building. If you look at the inspector's decision on page 54, it makes it very, very clear. And I'm really very worried when I see that's not what we agreed. I'm quite convinced it's not. We agreed, I thought, and I would like clarification, that we would ask for the demolition of the property that's at appeal at the moment, and we would gave permission for the original 2017 permission, which was not in the same location.
So can I respond to that? So the report clearly sets out, and this is the report that was at the committee 6 months ago, is the proposal is permission to demolish the existing unauthorised structure and construct a new dwelling of the same scale, bulk and massing and exactly the same position as the previous approved 2017 permission. So you are correct. That's the application we're asking you to consider this evening.
What I'm saying is that is not where the original plan was given permission. That is not 6 metres. I just don't see that at all. And when the inspector came, and I remember people were very new in this committee, and we had 2 applications in, one which was for just taking off part of the existing building, and we said no to that, because if you read page 54, the inspector's recommendation, he says quite clearly that he noted that the combination of siting, height and materials of the development caused it to be unduly prominent and visually dominant, and as a result it causes significant, substantial and unacceptable harm to the character. And you know, if 2017 did not have, it was not on that site. You know, it was further into the site, 6 metres further south from where that building that's on site at the moment was built. And it was certainly nothing like the height. So I want to be very, very clear what we're giving permission for tonight, because I don't think that is what we gave permission for in June last year.
Sorry, Councillor Coburn, I'm trying to get the file up so that I can take. Certainly what we're putting in front of you this evening is to to just extend the period of delegation. Location. Sorry, bear with me. The system, it would be quicker to draw it than for it to actually display itself. Okay, that's the same plan as that. So the plan that we've shown is definitely the latest plan that we've got on the file, and it is per the plans shown to you at the previous committee. So the plans are all January 2023.
Sorry, if I may, Chairman, just going on the inspector's decision, which, noted that the building had been located the original basic, the one that had been agreed was located 6 meters, off the original decision site and much, much bigger. And it was the prominence in the area that was the problem with it. People didn't have a problem with a particular the one that was previously given permission, but I don't recall it being where that is. I mean, I just don't see that moving 6 meters to the south, but maybe my concept of what 6 meters looks like is different. I mean, basically, I've not even begun my speech yet and I'm talking too much, but basically, we've got to get this right. This is an eyesore, it's at appeal, it's already got enforcement on it for demolition. They've appealed that enforcement. That's what we're waiting for. And so far, they haven't taken any of it down whatsoever, despite the fact that we gave them permission last time to demolish the existing building and rebuild what they had permission for on the 2017 site. And the inspector did make the point that that wasn't the only pattern that could be built. And I agree. I mean, I'm not trying to stop something happening on this site, but anybody who lives in the Bourne, Councillor Clark knows it well. I'm sure Councillor Ward's passed it a few times. I mean, it's absolutely appalling, and it's been appalling for 8 years, at least.
So just to confirm, and totally, Councillor Coburn, support everything you are saying. Obviously, by the actions we have taken, we're supporting you on this position. I haven't got the 2017 plan here to display on the screen this evening, because that's not the presentation. So, members, we can either defer this application and get the applicant to effectively complete the unilateral agreement ready for signing the next day and bring it back to committee if there is any doubt in anybody's mind. But these are the plans and it's indeed the report that was considered at the June committee.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was with Councillor Coburn at the appeal, and it's something that we have to get right. It's gone through many hands since the beginning, and I suggest that the committee approves the delegated authority for the head of planning to go ahead on the condition that the head of planning meets with the ward councillor, Councillor Coburn, to make sure 100% that there aren't any misunderstandings.
Is that acceptable to you, Councillor Coburn?
Yes, no, I'm just trying to get the right thing on this. I don't mind how much effort goes into it, but, it has been so wrong. This started being built in 17, 18. And residents raised it right from the start that they were building it on the wrong site, they were not using the right materials, it was at the wrong angle. This was all raised right at the beginning. And people, I don't know how many letters and phone calls we have on this site because it is so prominent. It sticks out like a sore thumb, it's like a carbuncle. It is such an inappropriate building on the site it's on. And we have got to get it right because we did give it permission. It has the principle of building, but it was low and it was meant to be built into the hill. Behind what's built at the moment is a steep hill. And because they haven't built this into the hill, you've got a gap and they've put boarded fences around it. This is an area covered by FMP8, which is the wooded area bit. It is it comes just after the Lower Bourne village sign, you know, before you get to the Bourne Green, and you've just got this monstrosity. And, you know, I can't believe, I think there's people throwing stones at the screen as I speak with the idea that we're not actually going to get this wretched thing demolished and replaced with something suitable. So, yes, I'll agree to that as long as we have proper discussions about it and see if we can get the right thing for the Bourne, because this so far has just been disaster after disaster. And I'm not blaming the officers, by the way, the enforcement. It's been with the inspectorate for 15 months, 16 months, I don't know. I look every day to see whether it's on its way. So, I mean, the inspectorate's also not helped everybody. But, you know, it's at appeal because we told them they had to demolish it. And I don't want to go back from that hideous building. It was built in the wrong place, wrong height, wrong materials. I mean, how wrong do you have to be before you get your building knocked down? So as far as I'm concerned, it should be, I would actually like the condition that it has to be demolished, so then at least we'd know that that was the intention. And then we can get on and get something built that actually fits into that area. It's got to nestle into the hillside, otherwise it will always be a carbuncle.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weldon.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to go into the merits of the application. I do remember this coming up last year, and I'm not going to comment on that. What bothers me, though, is the principle. There was approval with condition that an agreement had to be reached within 6 months. That's not been done, and I'm puzzled by the response that we therefore just do away with the deadlines. This has already been dragging on for years, and I'm not quite sure why we simply remove the deadline. So I'm not happy. Thank you.
You can answer that.
Yeah, I can answer that. So the committee have already resolved to grant planning permission, and to refuse it would take us down an unnecessary appeal route with cost and resource implications. The unilateral undertaking has been slightly slower in completion due to a number of factors. So it's not that the applicant has been scuffing their feet to complete it. And it's for that reason that I'm seeking delegated authority, because the right planning decision is to grant this permission to enable the demolition and to resolve the situation that has been playing out and dragging on for a number of years on this site. So it's for that reason that I'm seeking to extend the period of delegation to allow the UU to be completed and for planning permission to be granted.
Councillor Ward.
I know I'm getting old now, but I'm getting a little confused. I didn't quite see why we had a whole load of diagrams here if all we are doing is extending a deadline of a condition. And the problem seems to be some doubt about the pictures we're shown now compared to what we had before. My tablet has just died on me. Could someone actually read out to me exactly what the recommendation is for me to approve? And then I might wish to comment further.
Yes, I'll read the chair. It is recommendation that, subject to the completion of appropriate legal agreement to secure the financial contributions towards the ongoing maintenance and enhancement of Farnham Park, and subject to conditions that outline permission be granted. But in effect, it's just an extension of the legal agreement times.
Yeah, it's an extension of the delegation that you've already granted to me.
If I may comment, you're actually saying planning permission may be granted. What we're trying to do is extend the ability to sign an agreement. And that the wording just doesn't quite seem right to me. And I quite understand Councillor Coburn's concern if the diagram that popped up on the screen is not to her memory what we gave permission for. I would be more comfortable if there was some reference to extending the deadline for the permission already given at whatever date it happened to be, because it just sort of, there's obviously some concerns in the room, and I think we need to nail it down.
So an alternative recommendation then, if you want to still put a timeline on it, would be delegated authority to the executive head of planning development to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a legal Section 106 agreement or an agreement within 2 months or 3 months. It is actually quite a straightforward process. And then in consultation with Councillor Coburn.
If Councillor Coburn's content, then I am.
Mr. Chairman, no, that's fine. And the other ward councillor, presumably.
Can we agree that, for vote on that? Do we have electronic voting or electronic voting again?
Okay, that was passed unanimously.
Thank you. Anybody wish to talk about and discuss? Or can we take that? Sorry. Can you just clarify this, Secretary, so there are no one's misunderstanding?
So members, I'm seeking delegated authority to complete the legal agreement, subject to which will secure financial contributions to the ongoing maintenance and enhancement of Farnham Park, and subject to the conditions.
Okay, Chair, again, that was passed unanimously.
Right. Now we come on to, well, the final application for now, which is WA 2023-02009, St John's Seminary, Wonersh. And in fact, there's also another application as well. This is a listed building consent for alteration and extensions to the St John's Seminary to create 41 dwellings, including alterations to the chapel, to provide residents gym and spa facilities following demolition of existing outbuildings, and erection and extensions to the lodge and lower lodge. And we should run the presentation, which will also cover the next application, which is WA 2023-02010, which is the erection and extensions and alterations to existing buildings to provide a total of 52 dwellings, alterations to the chapel to provide residents gym and spa facilities following demolition of existing outbuildings, erection of extensions to the lodge and lower lodge, associated works including landscaping, parking, immediate space, formation of new vehicle access onto Cranley Road. So we're going to have one presentation that covers both of these applications, but they will be voted on separately. So Tracy Farthing to lead the application.
Thank you, Chairman.
So before us, we have two applications. One is the planning application and one is the listed building consent. The descriptions of each are on your screen. There are differences between the descriptions because the applications, well, the scheme is formed of several elements, some of which only require listed building consent or planning permission, and some that require both planning and listed building consent. The application site is located in the green belt and within an area of great landscape value. The edge of Wanneroo settlement boundary is approximately 100 metres to the west. The settlement boundary of Shamley Green is located approximately 500 metres to the south. So the proposal includes, several elements to the scheme, including the conversion of the existing Grade 2 seminary building, extensions to the seminary, which will provide 13 dwellings, a retention on and conversion of an old farm building which predates the seminary building. That building itself is not listed, and extensions to 2 existing residential lodges on the site. Also proposed is a new access, including internal roads, some new ancillary buildings, bin stores, bike stores, carports, and a comprehensive landscaping scheme, including the parking and amenity space and areas of play. No affordable housing is proposed as part of the scheme. A financial viability assessment was submitted as part of the application that sought to demonstrate that providing affordable housing was unviable. The council has had the financial viability assessment externally and independently reviewed. Initial queries were raised, which were satisfied by further detailed information relating to projected build costs versus a generic price per square metre, and with regards to potential sales values. The council accept that the scheme could not viably provide affordable housing either on-site or by way of a commuter sum. However, given the uncertainty of the costings and valuations, this will be re-evaluated at a later stage to review the actual figures, which may determine whether an affordable housing contribution would be achievable. The trigger for this would be negotiated through the Section 106 agreement. I'll pass you over to Sophie, who's going to talk in depth about the existing building on site.
St John's Seminary is a Grade 2 listed, large, late 19th century building in the Dutch Jacobean style. It was designed by Frederick Arthur Walters for the Catholic Church for its use as the focal point of training of priests in the Archdiocese of Southwark. It remained in its original use for its entire lifetime until it was closed in 2021. The main building is fairly central to the site in an H shape with the chapel attached to its western end. There are 2 lodge houses, 1 at each access, and a group of service buildings adjacent to the east end of the building, which includes the detached laundry. The laundry and lodges are considered to be Curtilage listed structures. The farm building to the southeast of the main building dates to before the development of the site as a seminary, having been part of the former Lotterswood farm. It's therefore not Curtilage listed, but it illustrates the history of the site. The building substantially retains its plan form, principal interior spaces and historic features, in which tells us about how the seminary functioned and how its occupants lived and worked in the building. It has been subject to some alteration and extensions in the 20th century, including 1960s extensions on each of the wings and chapel. These extensions are very successful, with them not being easily perceivable from the exterior. The building has a number of large principal spaces. The most important of these are considered to be the ambulacrum, which is the left-hand photo, the chapel, which is the bottom right-hand photo, the library, which is in the middle, and the refectory, which is the top right-hand photo. As the chapel was a church building in active use by the Roman Catholic Church, it had ecclesiastical exemption from requiring listed building consent to remove the interior fittings. This was granted permission by the Southern Historic Churches Committee in 2021. These photos show more of the details and features within the building. In particular, the top left is one of the other communal areas which has less decorative detailing. Bottom left is the exterior of the chapel. To the right of that is the exterior of the laundry with the interior in the photo above. The top left hand photo on this slide shows the remaining timber panelling of the dormitories on the 3rd floor. This is an important part of the significance as it still clearly demonstrates the hierarchy. The top right hand photo shows the rest of the 3rd floor where the timber panelling has previously been lost. The other photos show some other historic features within the first and second floors. The conversion will require some subdivision and loss of plan form and fabric, but the proposed use is likely to be the optimum viable use for the site. In the main, the conversion has been dealt with sensitively with a minimal amount of subdivision proposed. On the lower ground floor, accommodation is just within the southern 2 wings with new accesses proposed for each unit. The coal chute will be retained and the central section will be plant rooms. On the ground floor, the ambulacrum will be retained in its open form as a communal space with the doors visible. The other rooms in this central section will have doorways created internally and some subdivision, but the original plan form will be appreciable with all historic features remaining. The wings will require more subdivision and loss of walls to enable the conversion, but these rooms are, in the main, of lesser importance with less historic detailing. The exception to this is the refectory in the southeast wing. As one of the principal rooms, its retention is more important. The refectory will be subdivided for private use, therefore less than substantial harm is identified, but all of the decorative pillars and other historic features will be retained. On the 1st floor, the central section will retain its internal corridor. The rooms will have some subdivision and a creation of openings, but the plan form will still be appreciable with historic features such as the fireplaces retained. As with the ground floor, the wings will require more subdivision and loss of walls to enable the conversion, but again, these rooms are in the main of lesser importance with less historic detailing. The exception to this is the library, a double height space whose retention is more important. The library will remain an open double height space forming part of the same residential unit as the refectory. Its decorative pillars will be retained, but some of the bookshelves will be lost and it will be in private use. Therefore, less than substantial harm has been identified. On the 2nd floor, the central section has been dealt with in a similar fashion to the 1st floor, as have the wings. On the 3rd floor, the proposal does involve the loss of a small proportion of the remaining timber panelling, but the rest will be retained to enable an appreciation of the plan form, ensuring retention of important historic fabric. In the chapel, the space is being kept fairly open with only a small amount of subdivision. It will remain in communal use. The proposed pools are in this 1960s extension and will be freestanding. The proposed works will allow it to be reversible and adaptable. I'll now pass you back to Tracy.
Moving now to the extensions. The proposed extensions would be sited to the north or the rear of the seminary building. At present, the H-shaped building provides a courtyard area to the rear of the building, and the sense of enclosure is exaggerated by the rise of the land at the rear. That's appreciated in the top right photo. The 4-storey extensions are proposed to be set into the ground where the land rises, running parallel with the main body of the seminary and chapel building. The top or 3rd floor is recessed from the elevation, minimizing bulk and mass. Each extension features a flat roof and angular form, designed in this manner to reflect the east tower of the existing seminary building. The proposed height does not exceed the height of the existing seminary building, ensuring that the extensions wouldn't be visible from the front or the south when viewing on the primary facade of the seminary and chapel. The architectural detailing has been approached in a contemporary manner, such that there is clear definition between new built form and the existing, taking cues from the architectural style of the building. The extensions provide 5 four-storey dwelling houses. Each of these have got private amenity areas in the form of external ground floor amenity area and also terraces. And each block will also have 4 apartments, so one on each floor. To the southeast of the existing seminary buildings are some existing farm buildings. I mentioned before that the farm building is actually the oldest building on the site. In addition to the old farm building, there's a cluster comprising storage buildings and garages. And there's also quite a lot of hard standing in this area, which doesn't contribute to the setting. The proposal is to retain the oldest building, convert that to a dwelling, and demolish the other buildings, in their place building a cluster of single-storey dwellings arranged around a central courtyard, emulating a traditional farmstead. The new built element would provide another 8 dwellings, totalling 9 in this area. It wouldn't compete with the hierarchy of the seminary, and traditional materials appropriately related to a farmstead, including timber weatherboarding, red brick and clay tiles, would distinguish the building as a separate entity from the seminary building. Each of these units has external private amenity space in the communal shared courtyard. There are 2 existing lodges on the site, one to the existing eastern access and one to the west. These are both to be extended within the 40% sort of parameters of Greenbelt development, and they're of an appropriate design which reflect the scale and form of the host buildings. The existing accesses are dangerous. Therefore, a new access has been proposed. Surrey County Council Highway Authority are satisfied with the detail of these. The provision of 2 bus stops, one at the site entrance and one on the opposite side of the road, have been provided. The access would require the loss of 2 mature lime trees along with other vegetation, and the bank will need to be regraded along this section. This has the potential to alter the character along the road by introducing the entrance, but it's considered that the loss of the trees and regrading of the bank are balanced against against the benefits of safe access, and the details of the access and retaining wall are to be secured via condition to ensure that the entrance is not overly dominant. The closure of the existing access does result in the 2 lodge houses losing their sense of purpose as lodge houses to the seminary. Therefore, this element of the scheme results in less than substantial harm. New ancillary buildings on the site include carports, bin stores and cycle storage buildings, or 1 cycle storage building. Whilst these new buildings are in appropriate development in the Greenbelt, officers are satisfied that very special circumstances exist to outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt. These buildings are ancillary in scale and use to the proposed residential use of the site, which is considered to be the optimum viable use of the site, and are necessary to ensure a comprehensive scheme can be delivered. The overall landscaping scheme is to maintain the verdant character of the site. The western half of the site sees many of the trees retained and a play area provided within the woodland at the northwest. West. Dwellings are provided with private amenity space and communal areas are also provided. In addition to that, parking provided is in accordance with the council's parking guidance, and all spaces are proposed with EV charging points. A permissive footpath is proposed through the site. The footpath will be a benefit to future residents of the site and also the wider community in terms of the local connectivity, particularly between Wonersh and Shamley Green. This slide is just to aid members in determining which parts of the scheme require listed building consent, which parts planning permission, and which both. And could I just note that the recommendation for the planning application is as per the report. However, the recommendation for listed building consent, currently it says that the recommendation is to grant subject to conditions listed. However, we would like to grant subject to the conditions listed and that delegated authority be given to the Executive Head of Planning to add or amend conditions as well. Thank you.
Right, we have two public speakers on this. The first is James Taylor, who I believe is in the... James, you have 4 minutes to speak when you start speaking.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. At the outset, we met with the local community before we started any form of design work. During the first meeting, we were literally overwhelmed with the level of interest. Over 100 people attended the initial meeting. It was this insight that proved to be invaluable when delivering a scheme that would be compliant in terms of planning and be welcomed by the local community, who included villagers, the staff of local schools and businesses, all of our immediate neighbours, people who have worked in the seminary, past and present, the families of relatives and loved ones of those whose last resting place are the seminary grounds, and the parish council. As you can imagine, these views were technical and practical, as well as emotional and sentimental. All were regarded as highly important by the design team, and none were ignored. This approach resulted in widespread support for the team, for the scheme. Many letters of support were received during the process, and there were no formal objections. Your planning and heritage officers proved to be professional and efficient during the numerous pre-application meetings, which ensured our application is technically correct and careful consideration to all important heritage issues was made. I am grateful to a professional team of consultants and professionals that I worked alongside during the design process, delivering high quality design which is sensitive to its setting and the environment. It is also hugely energy efficient. This in turn produced detailed and professional responses from all statutory consultees, none of whom have any objections to the final scheme. It is universally agreed that residential use is the best solution for conserving this important heritage asset. We've spoken this evening about planning and balance. It is noted that this scheme does not provide affordable housing on site. As a business, we help to deliver hundreds of affordable homes every year, and I also understand personally the important assistance affordable homes brings to people who cannot afford to own their own home for whatever reason. The viability study was carefully audited, and a late-stage review is put in place to ensure that if the build cost can be reduced or if sales values increase in the future, we would be delighted to pay a contribution towards good quality affordable housing in the area. We tell people during our public consultation that our developments benefit the community as a whole, not just those who buy homes within them. So what good does this development do to the community? It's the conservation of an incredibly important heritage asset. When completed, this building will be one of the most energy efficient of its kind in Europe. A considerable seal payment will be made, improvements to road safety within the locality and improvements to public footpaths totalling in excess of £200,000. 2 new bus stops which are more visible and easier to access. It was incredibly encouraging that the majority of our immediate neighbours regularly use the bus service, and we hope the people that live within this development will also take advantage of this service. For the first time in its history, the local community will have access to the seminary grounds by way of a permissive path that will give better connectivity between the villages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is in fact a ward councillor, Councillor Goodridge, who has 4 minutes before and 4 minutes after the debate. Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, I should make it clear that I've morphed from being a substitute on this committee and am now a ward councillor and no longer on the committee for the rest of the evening. I have been involved as the ward councillor and as a local resident on this site for over 2 years. I have been invited to at least 2 pre-apps, one of which was before the sale of this site to the current applicants, and have been kept very much up to date with what is being proposed. I would like to say how pleased I was that the applicant engaged positively with the local community throughout. Public meetings and consultations before the plans were made, and as Mr. Taylor has made clear, the villagers had some views and quite a lot of views, but they listened. And so when the plans were then produced and again shown for consultation with the village, the public were very pleased with what they saw. Bearing in mind that this is probably the largest application that has happened to Wonersh since Waverley was formed, and bearing it is perhaps a surprise, but in reality not a surprise, that due to the listening and the consultation and the engagement, nobody is objecting to either application. And in fact, on the listed building consent, a member of the public has confirmed that there was in good engagement with the developer and with the neighbours. And therefore, in my view, this is a sort of prime way of taking the village with you. There's been constant dialogue between the developers and the parish council, and the parish council came up with a list of sort of what we would like out of this, and the developer has met most of them. And the biggest, or one of the most important, is the footpath that now could exist between the centre of Wonersh to this site, out the other end, and cross the road, and then be able to walk off the road or cycle to Shamley Green. And there has not been the possibility of doing that for, well, ever since the 2 villages existed. And those who went on the site visit will have known how dangerous it is to walk or cycle on the main road, which is the only option that they have apart from cars. Clearly, I'm disappointed that there is no affordable housing, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised due, firstly, to the uniqueness of the site, and the fact that the parish council's wish list has obviously cost money to do the things that the developer has agreed to do, and that is taken into account. Also, the planning committee, no doubt, are aware, and having been on the planning committee for years in the past, we try to integrate affordable housing, if you can, on site, so they don't stick out as a sore thumb in one place. Because of this site, it's practically impossible to provide affordable housing on site because of the character of the buildings, the listed buildings and so on. And therefore, I am fully in favour of the officer's recommendations, and I hope the committee will be also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goodridge. You'll have 4 minutes afterwards if you so wish. First of all, questions to the officers on this application? There's a question. Any questions to the officers on this application? Any?
Yes, I want to raise this problem with affordable housing, please. I am of the opposite view to Councillor Goodridge. I'm afraid after that debate we had earlier on in this planning session, where we decided that housing locally was far more important than some of the other issues, I still feel the same here with this one. I don't accept that builders who make for profit cannot build affordable housing, or indeed haven't got the ingenuity to place those affordable housings in either a flat or somewhere within this proximity that doesn't form ghettos. I'm very much minded that I appreciate what you're saying with coming back to us later if there's more profit made. My problem is, does that involve the committee? Do we ever know about it? Or is that a decision made by yourselves? How will we know that in fact the builder did make extra profits and we now have got some affordable on it? So my question to the officers is, once that end point is reached, will it be coming back to committee to inform us of what's happened?
So through you, Chair, the normal process with reassessment of viability within a permission would be an officer decision. Obviously, as a council, we display all the information concerning 106s through the website. If the members were minded to approve, then they could approve subject to not it bringing back to committee as a formal decision, but to bring it back to update them and keep them informed of that reassessment and the outcome of that.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor White.
Another technical point, I'm afraid, Chair. Just probably for my due to my own ignorance, really, but the recommendation, subject conditions listed building consent is granted. Is that effectively, is that the same in real terms as outline planning? So it would then be material amendments, reserve matters would take place after that?
No, so you've got two applications before you. One's a full application, and we're seeking delegated authority to complete the 106, but also, and the reason why I'm wanting delegated authority to amend or add conditions is that it might be that we need to amend a word, or it might be that we need to add conditions during the negotiations on the 106, and where different how we secure things and whether it sits within the 106. So it's just to have that flexibility and not to have to come back to committee to you because I want to change an and to a the, or put a comma in or something. And then for the listed building consent, I think we're conscious that because of the complexities of this building, that we may not have captured all the conditions on the listed building consent that we need. And that therefore, for that reason, I'm seeking delegated authority to add or amend conditions once we've gone through what's proposed with an even finer tooth comb in the context of the 106, the planning conditions, and then the appropriate conditions to add to the listed building consent.
Thank you.
Rivers wishes to speak first, then Councillor Hughes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, it seems to me that this application here in front of us tonight did merit a site visit, as the photos, though lovely, only give a taste of the building and particularly of the interior. It is a lovely building with many fine features, and it is right we treat it with the utmost respect. A new word on me, the umbilicum, is that right? Yes. Well, having seen that, it is the most perfect space and one that we really should admire and wish to keep as a perfect space. The parquet floor is spectacular. Now, being of the age that I am quite familiar with old parquet floors in buildings, having little signs that say no stilettos. I think this floor is perfect because no stilettos ever trod that hallowed hall. So I think maybe consideration can be given to keeping it that way.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that at its peak, the seminary housed 300 students, but unfortunately, on the year before its closure, housed only 17. Many buildings of this size that are no longer sustainable fall into disrepair quite quickly, as there is no one with deep enough pockets to bring them back to life. So I can only describe the developer as the White Knight of Wonorish that has ridden to the rescue of St John's Seminary. Looking at the exterior, as you would expect, there will be virtually no change to the exterior of the building, with the exception of the addition of the large extension to the rear, which of course is subservient to the main building being less than 40%. However, looking at the interior, virtually everything that had any religious significance has been removed. So to some extent, the building is an empty shell. Much of the interior located in the upper floors has little significance. However, the large principal spaces, such as the chapel and the library, are extremely impressive. But as has been said, it's not just the fabric of the building which is being retained, but its very essence, the very essence of how this building functioned as a seminary. It's this aspect of the development where the developer has listened carefully to our, and I quote, professional and efficient planning colleagues, and both parties should be congratulated. And certainly, I think we all hope that this building has another successful 130 years to look forward to. Thank you.
Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think this is an excellent application from every point of view, really. I mean, a building has two functions. Well, building has to look good and then it has to have a function, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, really the only option to maintain this building in any form would have been something residential. I mean, realistically, this day and age, that size of building. I just think the whole thing is going to be a delight. And I don't have a problem in this particular instance with the lack of affordable. I've always had a slight problem with the idea that we have to build the same mix on every single site, wherever it is, across the borough. Because you and I know that this borough has all sorts of sites, all sorts of areas, some of which lend themselves to affordable housing, some of which, quite frankly, are in the wrong place for affordable housing. And my aim is to get the right mix, but across the borough, not necessarily on a site-by-site basis, because I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to do. I think the sympathetic use of this building is really a lesson to us all. We've had smaller schemes than this in the borough over the years, but nothing on this scale. And I do congratulate everyone involved. I sincerely hope it really works. The conditions are onerous. I mean, I've never seen so many conditions that we're putting the applicant and the developer who eventually has to do the actual work on the site. So, you know, I wish them good luck with that. I understand why they're there. But I do think, given the number of conditions, the difficulty of materials, and also not damaging any of the structure of this important building. I think what is proposed is perfectly acceptable, and like Councillor Clark, I wish it every success, and very, very pleased to support this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Crowe and Councillor Weldon. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much, Chair. I certainly support this application. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. And I'm also absolutely delighted that, you know, people aren't going to be taking their life in their hands when they try to get from Woolwich to Shamley Green. Well, obviously it'll go on for a bit longer, but hopefully people will survive it. I do also, though, look forward to an update on what the developers will be able to contribute to affordable housing at some point, because Woolwich does also need affordable housing. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic development, and well done to everybody. And it's obviously a really good example of genuine consultation.
Councillor Weldon and Councillor Spence. Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. I have to say I'm just a little bit conflicted about this. As a practicing Catholic, I'm very conscious of the fact that there are no more seminarians coming through, and it is simply no longer viable as a seminary. And so therefore, what can be done with it? I think it's a very imaginative and useful plan in terms of preserving the very useful, important building and the heritage assets and all that kind of thing. I think it's a terrific application in principle. I also would say that although I'm on the other side of the borough down in Hazelmere, and I'm not particularly familiar with Woolwich at all, I have been to the site because as a Catholic I have attended functions there. And I suspect, Councillor Rivers, yes, when I was there were ladies with stilettos, but very, very rarely. My concern, as with Councillor Rubini, obviously is with affordable housing, and I regret that. However, I do understand there are issues around this. My instinct in general with the viability assessment is that if it's not viable, come up with another application that is. I don't think that applies in this case, so rather reluctantly I will accept that the affordable housing is not in this case viable, and I support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spence.
Thank you, Chairman. I very much in sympathy with what Councillor Weldon has just said. I think this application has got a lot to say for itself. Clearly, the developer has engaged with the local community and has had a positive engagement. I do note, however, that they've been able to find the funds for the council's wish list, but not for any affordable housing. And I find this a very difficult one because this is the sort of site, I think it should have 15 affordable houses. And I find it very difficult that not even one affordable house can be found here. I also take little comfort from the Section 106 commitment, which I think it says that once the private market units have been sold, if the developer's profits turn out to be higher than forecast. Well, the developer is a business, and I think we all know that businesses can make sure or ensure that their profits are reduced by all sorts of means that are probably quite legitimate. So I take little comfort from that. I would very much like to see a proposition with affordable housing at the outset. Thank you.
Councillor Richard Speed. Councillor, another 4 minutes if you wish.
Only very briefly, clearly affordable housing is potentially an issue, but certainly so far as the parish council are concerned, the things of the footpaths and the other things that have been acquired were of paramount importance, and affordable housing would be nice as well, but there's the practicality of it. As a local resident, I will, on the basis that this is passed, will lose a film set. It's been in Foyles War, I think Poirot as well. We're going to lose the, so look at back issues of Foyles War and find if you can see when the seminary was used. But I hope that the members will support this application. It is very important that this building is kept and is restored and kept before it goes into decline. And it's been, as I say, very much supported by the village. And nobody has raised any objections. So I would urge the committee to go along with the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. We come to the recommendations. Now, what we'll do is we'll take it to the Planning Commission on first, which is the erection of extensions and alterations to the existing buildings to provide a total of 52 dwellings, alterations to the chapel to provide residence, gym and spa facilities following demolition of existing outbuildings, erection of extensions to the lodge and lower lodge, associated works including landscaping, parking, amenity space, formation of a new vehicle access onto Cranley Road, and perhaps we ought to add that there will be an opportunity to come back on the possibility of whether there'll be any affordable housing to that. Yeah, so that'll be updated accordingly on that. Are people willing to vote on that, please?
So that's 11 votes in favour, 1 abstention and 1 vote against. The recommendation is carried.
Thank you.
So, sorry, I'm unclear what we are now voting on. As amended.
Again, that's voted in favour unanimously.
Well, we haven't quite finished, and in fact, Councillor Goodridge, you can be welcome back to the committee now because we have still to have a report on the, on the planning enforcement update report. This is not for debate because eventually there will be a presentation for all councillors, but it's just an update report for noting, and it's Victoria Charlton to present.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Victoria Larson. I'm the Enforcement Team Leader, and this is the Planning Enforcement Update Report for the Planning Committee for the year 2023. Just going to give you just a very, very brief overview of the team and just a couple of headlines. Just to inform you that we have the Planning Enforcement team is made up of 6 members. We've got 1 team leader, 1 senior, 3 officers, we've got 1 vacancy at the moment, and a part-time technician. As you will see further down the report, our cases on hand, generally throughout the year, are around 250 cases. And further down, you'll see that the notices that we served in 2023 were 9, which is generally the average for the last couple of years. We serve about 10 a year, most of which are appealed. And the recommendation is for that members note the performance on planning enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I say, there will be an opportunity, there will be a presentation to all councillors in due course, training session, and there will be an opportunity then for discussion. Right, other than that, that brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. Thank you very much for your patience, forbearing. What was a quite difficult evening. So have a safe journey home, everybody.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see the second half of the football. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was expecting a mouse or something up here to move it. Oh, right, yeah. Good. Thank you.